the Panama Canal and the Caribbean. On this channel, we usually talk about countries of the Caribbean and, of course, Guyana. Now, you may ask, what does Panama, a country plumb in the middle of Central America, have to do with us in the Caribbean? Well, let's take a look, shall we? Hi there and welcome once again to the Aaron Darcy Project, where we discuss the events and stories that reflect the remarkable history of the West Indies and Guyana. I am your host, Ryan, and today we will take a look at that extraordinary movement of the people from the Caribbean into Panama. Here's a brief history of the immigration of West Indians to Panama during the building of the canal, which explains the relationship between Panama and the Caribbean. The movement of West Indians to Panama began during the construction of the Panama Canal and is a significant event in West Indian history. This migration began around 1880 when the French commenced the construction of the canal. This migration was driven by the need for the large workforce necessary to undertake that massive construction project. There was a huge demand for a large pool of workers, and many West Indians badly wanted to improve their economic conditions. This is what encouraged individuals from several British Caribbean territories to migrate to Panama. More than 50,000 Anglo-West Indian workers migrated to the Isthmus of Panama, and some were followed by their wives. This voluntary separation from home and family represented an unimaginable promise of economic improvement for these people who had only just emerged from the bonds of slavery. But the sheer number of persons who rushed to immigrate to Panama forced the colonial authorities in the West Indies to regulate how many people were allowed to take the opportunity. The movement of West Indians into Panama continued into the period when the United States of America assumed responsibility for the construction of the canal. The majority of the canal's workforce during the U.S. construction period in the early 20th century arrived in Panama from the West Indies. This migration represents one of the most significant events to emerge in the Caribbean during the post-emancipation period after 1838. However, once the canal was opened to shipping in 1914, West Indian migration to Panama ceased. History keenly documents the movement of over 100,000 people from the Caribbean to the Isthmus of Panama, the majority of whom never returned. The highly successful recruiting process set in motion by the Isthmian Commission was ultimately responsible, both directly and indirectly, for the extraordinary pattern of West Indian emigration to Panama to work on the canal project. This, then, has been a quick look at the relationship between Panama and the islands of the Caribbean. For those of you who want to learn more about this part of our history, please continue to the full podcast. West Indian men played a crucial role in the construction of the Panama Canal during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. A significant number of them from the British Caribbean territories, like Barbados, Jamaica, and St. Lucia, were recruited to work on the canal. The Isthmian Commission, responsible for the construction of the canal, actively recruited West Indian workers who were promised economic opportunities, and so, over 50,000 Anglo-West Indian men, along with their families, moved to Panama during this period. The migration of these West Indians led to the formation of vibrant Afro Panamanian communities, which still exist today and which have had a lasting impact on both Panama and the West Indian Islands. The contributions of these West Indian workers were vital to the successful completion of the canal. However, the migration also had significant social and economic impacts on the West Indian Islands, as many of these workers never returned home. The living conditions for men in Panama during the construction of the Panama Canal were quite challenging. These workers were often housed in overcrowded and poorly constructed barracks. The men slept on 3 layers of bunk beds in the barracks, and while some workers did seek their own accommodations in the jungle, the majority lived in these cramped barracks. The mess halls for black workers lacked basic amenities like tables and chairs and served simple, unappealing food. This inadequate diet made the workers more susceptible to diseases and injuries. The construction work was hard, extremely demanding, and labor-intensive. West Indian workers were typically assigned the most physically taxing jobs, such as digging ditches, cutting brush, carrying lumber, and operating rock drills. They worked long hours, often 6 days a week, under harsh conditions. The tropical environment in Panama posed significant health risks, including yellow fever and malaria. Despite efforts to control these diseases, the fear of illness was a constant concern for the workers. The sanitation conditions were poor, contributing even more to the spread of diseases. And while this was a period just after the emancipation of slavery, there was a clear racial divide in the canal zone. White workers, often referred to as gold workers, received better pay and living conditions, while black workers, known as silver workers, were paid in local silver currency and lived in much poorer conditions. Despite these hardships, the contributions of the West Indian immigrants proved invaluable to the successful completion of the Panama Canal. Their resilience and hard work played a major role in this monumental engineering feat. The migration of West Indian workers to Panama also created significant impacts on their families. The money that was sent back home provided much-needed financial support to their families and was used for basic necessities like education and improving living conditions. But the absence of a large number of men from families in the islands led to changes in family dynamics. The wives of the men who had left their homes in the islands had to now take on additional responsibilities, both in terms of household chores and earning livelihoods. This shift sometimes led to increased empowerment for women, but also added to their burdens. The migration also led to a decrease in the working-age male population in the islands, and this affected local economies and community structures. Some communities experienced a decline in traditional practices and social cohesion due to the prolonged absence of the male heads of families. The separation was also emotionally challenging as families faced long periods of uncertainty and anxiety about the well-being of their loved ones working in harsh conditions in Panama. Overall, while the migration provided great economic benefits through remittances, it also brought about significant social and emotional challenges for those left behind. Many West Indians who had migrated to Panama for work eventually returned to their home islands once the canal was completed in 1914. However, the process of reuniting did not always go well. After the canal's completion, a significant number of workers returned to their homes in the West Indies, and this helped to reunite families that had been separated for years. However, some chose to stay in Panama or move to other parts of Central America, creating new communities there. Those West Indians that did return home often faced economic and social challenges because the skills and experiences they had gained in Panama did not always translate into better job opportunities. The migration and subsequent return to the West Indies had lasting impacts on the social and economic fabric of the communities in the islands. The experiences of these men and their families contributed to the cultural and historical narratives of the communities in their homeland. At the same time, some West Indians did choose to remain in Panama, and this led to the formation of vibrant Afro Panamanian communities, which still exist today. Descendants of West Indians in Panama, known as Afro Panamanians, today form a significant part of Panama's population. These Afro Panamanians have maintained their cultural heritage, including language, music, and religious practices, and they have contributed to Panama's cultural diversity. Their influence is evident in the country's music, dance, and festivals, such as the annual Carnival. The historical connections between Panama and the West Indian islands have fostered ongoing economic relationships. Trade between these regions includes goods such as agricultural products and manufactured items. There have been continuous cultural exchanges over the years, with people traveling between Panama and the West Indies for work, education, and family visits. This has helped to maintain and strengthen cultural ties between these two communities. These interactions have enriched both regions, creating a unique blend of cultures and fostering a sense of shared history and identity. West Indian cuisine inevitably had a significant influence on Panamanian food, particularly through the Afro Panamanian community. West Indians introduced ingredients like coconut milk, plantains, yams, and various spices like curry, ginger, and hot peppers to Panamanian cooking. These ingredients are now staples in many Panamanian dishes. The use of slow cooking methods and the incorporation of bold, flavorful spices are hallmarks of West Indian culinary techniques that have been adopted into Panamanian cooking. The tradition of Sunday food, where families gather to prepare and enjoy large meals together, is another West Indian practice that has been embraced in Panama. This tradition emphasizes communal eating and the celebration of food as a central part of family life. Overall, the influence of West Indian cuisine has enriched Panamanian food, making it a diverse and flavorful culinary tradition. Many Panamanian restaurants offer special menus that feature fusion dishes, combining West Indian and Panamanian ingredients and cooking techniques. There are also some cultural events and food festivals that celebrate Afro-Panamanian heritage. These events often include live music, dance performances, and traditional foods, providing a rich cultural experience. These efforts not only celebrate the culinary fusion, but also honor the rich cultural heritage and contributions of the West Indian community in Panama. So, the next time you hear a West Indian speaking fluent Spanish, as I did a long time ago, don't wonder too much. It might very well be a descendant of one of the many West Indians who left our island so many decades ago, to be part of the building of the Panama Canal. Thank you for joining me on the Aaron Darcy project today, and thanks to all of you who continue to visit and support this channel. I trust that we have managed to share something new with you. If you enjoyed what we shared today, then please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. We look forward to having you on the next episode of the Aaron Darcy Project. Goodbye for now.